It's Divas That Care Radio. Stories, strategies, and ideas to inspire positive change. Welcome to Divas That Care, a network of women committed to making our world a better place for everyone. This is a global movement for women, by women, engaged in a collaborative effort to create a better world for future generations. To find out more about the movement, visit divasthatcare.com after the show. Right now, though, stay tuned for another jolt of inspiration.
Welcome, everyone, to the Divas That Care Network. I'm your host, Amy McKenzie. Today's show, The Wow of Women, features the remarkable journeys of women whose powerful and extraordinary choices positively impact people's lives. I am so excited to introduce Karin Goldgruber today, and let me tell you a little bit about her before I bring her on. We had such a powerful connection. Karin is a coach. She's certified in EFT, which is Emotional Freedom Techniques, as a practitioner. She specializes in working with women who identify themselves as being a highly sensitive person. And if you are one, then you know exactly what that means. And she has a personal and professional experience with this because she is so sensitive. She's born and raised in Austria. Karin now lives and is based out of Canada. And she herself, having dealt with this, knew how meaningful it was to discover that and then be able to deal with that. And it is her commitment to help those people who don't realize this is something real to actually deal with. She's got some solutions for us. So, Karin, thank you so much for joining us today on today's show.
Hi, Amy. It's nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And, yes, as I was just mentioning before we started, I so love your home country. I'm so glad I finally got to see one of the great cities of the world is Vienna, steeped in art and architecture and culture, and it's just a wonderful heritage. Beautiful place. But I wanted to kind of, just get us started here, with what you're up to. So professionally, you're working as a coach. Now, I'm not aware of a coaching classification, if you will, specifically for, as you put it, HSP. Is that something you created, or am I just now waking up to something I wasn't aware of?
No, actually, there's no certification yet. That's still in the future, but I've, through personal experience and working with EFT clients, and before that with energy healing, as an energy healing facilitator working with clients, I developed a way of working with highly sensitive people.
I had a feeling that was of your own sort of creation, inspiration. Isn't that marvelous? Wow. Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. First of all, if I am one of those people and I just know that I don't fit in, I understand that I'm not quite, people aren't responding like I am. I seem to feel more than other people. Help me understand if I'm in that position, what are some of the clues? Like, how do you know when you, for yourself or for a client?
Most highly sensitive people know intuitively since they were little. They pick up everybody's feelings around them. Sometimes they don't even know that they're doing that and are surprised that, they can feel happy, walk into a room, and suddenly they're sad, and it's like, what's going on with me? Because they are so aware of what's going on around them. They sense the subtle. They've heard messages like, oh, you're so sensitive, you're too sensitive, you're too emotional, you always overreact. Another thing is we are very sensitive, or it depends. Everybody is a little bit different, of course. As an HSP, we are easily overwhelmed by bright lights, strong smells, coarse fabrics. We also have a really rich, complex inner life. We get easily rattled when we have a lot to do in a short amount of time. And when we have to perform in front of other people, suddenly we are so overwhelmed, and where we do really well on our own, we have an audience and we get really nervous. So if I'm making any mistakes, I'm blaming it on my innate trait.
Good call. No, you're doing great. And it's true. Now, what occurs to me when you share that is that we've made that out to be a bad thing. You know, anytime you put two in something in front of a word, it's going to have probably a judgmental connotation. You're too sensitive, meaning there's something wrong with that. But what I'm hearing you say is that people are going to, it's an inborn trait. It's not something necessarily learned, right? It's something that you kind of show up that way. Would you say it's a natural kind of aspect of your personality, or is it socialized?
We are born with it. Elaine Arendt did quite a lot of research, and she also coined the phrase highly sensitive person. The scientific name for it is a sensory processing sensitivity. So about 25% of the population are highly sensitive people. Many of them are not don't know the term, and that's why I speak and I write and I do presentations to educate people, so to make this household word a word, really.
That's wonderful. So now, would it be an appropriate correlation to say that person is empathic, or is that something different?
Well, it depends on your definition of empathy, but we do feel, and because we've our whole life experienced such a wide range of emotions, that we do understand other people and how they feel and how they might react to certain incidences.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I imagine it's like anything. If you let's say you're not feeling well and you go to the doctor and they have no clue, the concern about not knowing the answer is sometimes more challenging to your health, just the stress aspect of that, than knowing what it is. So I would think that there would be a lot of sort of comfort in at least having something to identify that made you feel like you didn't belong or that there was something wrong with you. Is that one of the things that people benefit from with your work, would you say?
Definitely, and I experienced it as well when I read Elaine Arendt's book, The Highly Sensitive Person, for the first time. Actually, I read it in German. I read it in 2 days. When I came back to Canada, I read it again in English. And as I was reading, I perceived past experiences differently. I went like, okay, that's why. Now it makes sense. And suddenly I didn't feel so weird, so alone. And I almost felt like, oh my God, I have this secret power. And it's in a way it is.
What a great way to put it. You know, this is the age of superheroes, right? Marvel's having a heyday. And I think maybe it's because, now this is probably an outlandish theory, but I have this sense how we move there's a group mind element that is evident in our media, I feel, and it's indicative of kind of the pulse, if you will, of where we are in our development as a human race often. And I think there's something to the idea that there's a longing to identify our superpowers, if you will. And some people have even started to use that term, in a fun way. Well, my superpower is talking to people or what have you, right? But I love that in this case, because if you can take what was termed to be a too sensitive, right, a negative, and turn it around and help people see, wait, if you find how to tap this, if you get first aware of it and then tap into it, it does become your superpower, doesn't it?
It really does. And what we perceive as negative because we can't deal with it and we are not aware of it suddenly becomes this positive, gentle strength in our life.
That is so wonderful. Okay, so now for you, how does that play out? How does your superpower show up for you now? And in what ways does it benefit you?
Okay. The way it shows up, because as a highly sensitive person, we sense the subtle and we automatically process everything very deeply. So we have many the thought processes going on in our mind and our brain constantly, which easily leads to overstimulation and then, of course, overreaction. So if, as a highly sensitive person, if you have no way of dealing with all the sensory inputs, the sounds and noises and emails and everything, then of course you're feeling stressed. And when we are stressed, we can't think logically, we can't really function well. When you find a way, and I found EFT, emotional freedom techniques, to help me to deal with all those strong feelings, I started to create little bits and pieces, spaces of and calm. And as they started to expand, I noticed that I wasn't overreacting so quickly because I was calm. I was not in the fight, flight, or freeze response all the time. Then I noticed that I was more focused in my work. I had more strategic planning because I was able to self-regulate myself. And taking care of my self-regulation brings out all the other gentle gifts that we as highly sensitive people have.
Yeah, and in a way that you can actually probably direct them because they're not all muddled together. You have that sort of clear, calming space where you can approach one thing at a time. And it's interesting that you say this now. I'm thinking of some people I love that are near and dear to me that probably aren't aware of this. And now looking at it through your eyes, I'm recognizing that they may really fit this category and how hugely helpful this work would be for them, because I think they do feel almost like a slave to their emotions. Does that sound right at all to you? Did you have that experience?
Yes, because sometimes our emotions are so strong and they overtake us and we react really quickly. And very early on, we developed 2 different strategies that we think that will help us to deal with them. And the first one is we try to suppress all our feelings. So we are like everybody else, right? So we press them down until we can't hold them down anymore. And then boom, exactly what we try to avoid, we overreact. So that's one way. The other way is we try to make other people understand us. So instead of expressing the feelings we have in the way we feel them, we sometimes make them bigger. We exaggerate them, and we speak louder. And it's almost like, when you speak with, have you noticed when you speak with somebody who speaks a different language, how you speak louder with them? It happens to me many times, right? So highly sensitive people, by exaggerating their feelings, speaking louder when the other person doesn't really speak their language. And again, then we come over as like, oh, you're so emotional, everything is so big for you, when it's really not. We just try to get the other person to understand our language.
And how deep it is impacting you. That makes perfect sense. And then you get called an exaggerator. Now you're too expressive. First you're too sensitive. Exactly. Now you're too expressive. Well, yeah, that would be confounding. I could say, what's the middle ground? And then, when we're in the middle ground, are we actually, enjoying our life? Because we're so busy editing one way or the other, playing this sort of tightrope walk balancing act to have other people get us. That would be very stressful, I would think.
It is, and you're not expressing who you are because you're always so afraid and fearful and hypervigilant to please everybody. Then you feel like you're an actor. You're a certain way with one person because you are so sensitive. You sense what they need and want from you, so you give it to them. Then you do that for the next person and for the next person, and sometimes you feel like a chameleon and you don't even know who you are anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense too. So, all right. So help us picture what the world would be like if all the highly sensitive people actually, got this information, got basically sort of comfortable in their own skin with how it is for them, and were okay with, maybe some people still didn't know about it, but they were okay enough with it that for those who weren't quite up to speed on what this is and accepting of that the majority of people really understood, wow, it's just a whole different way of operating. It's a different operating system. It's like I'm almost hearing when you talk about this, I'm on my Mac expecting to have, a POS kind of experience, right? Like a regular, I'm trying to work on a Dell, you know, and I'm treating it like it's an Apple, so to speak, right? If everyone understood it, no, it's a different operating system, what would the world be like if we had that kind of understanding, and what would it mean for highly sensitive people?
First, for the highly sensitive person, we would feel more confident because we, at that point, we know how to deal with it, because we are aware of our tendency of being very nervous, of our tendency to get rattled when there are sudden changes in our daily schedule or in our life. So when we are able to regulate ourselves, we show up differently. For parents, if they know that they have a highly sensitive child, then they can work with that, and then there will be less conflict growing up. Like my youngest son is highly sensitive. At that time, I didn't know, and you can't imagine the fights that we had, because sudden changes just really, really stopped him in his track. For teachers, they would.
That makes sense. Mm-hmm.
Teachers would give different attention to highly sensitive kids. They would not force them to do a presentation in front of the class, because they would know that it's that the child is great when it's one-on-one, but not in front of a good group. Employers would value their employees that are more quiet, that are not as upfront as some other people. But I have to say, there's extroverted and introverted HSPs, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But employers would appreciate that HSPs, that they sense subtle details. They notice trends early, so this way mistakes can be prevented, and lots of money can be saved, because HSPs, because of their deep processing, can think ahead and can look at different scenarios, how something would play out. So there's a big cost factor for businesses.
Yeah, they probably save a lot on mediation too.
Exactly, conflict resolution.
Not to make light of it. I mean, seriously. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay, so help us understand, if I'm a highly sensitive person, I mean, my growth is blocked if I'm not being encouraged to speak in front of that group. Even if I'm an introvert and I never do that in my life, it's just like, you know, my background is theater. I believe everyone should be included in an improvisation or an acting class, just to have that development, the development aspect. So how do you determine, you know, and do you treat differently if someone is HSP and an introvert as opposed to an extrovert, and vice versa?
Well, it's because we can use this trait as an excuse, or we can use it as an advantage. For example, I'm an HSP, so for me, it's easy to speak with people now. In the beginning, it wasn't. It took me quite some practice. When I first came to Canada, I was so shy and unsure of my English that my goal was to go out every day to say hello to 3 people. And when I did that, I went home and I was happy like a clam. You know, it's like, oh, I did that. So we need to challenge ourselves at the speed that works for us. There's no way of pushing an introverted HSP to speak in front of a class. They may do a presentation and record it on video and then show it in front of the class. They will sit with the class, idea. Right? So then they're doing the same work as the others. It's recorded. So we need to find unique ways for each person, and that's what I really encourage in my clients, to find their own solutions, because they are the experts in their life, and I'm here to help them to find those solutions.
That's wonderful. So you have a bag of tricks, a lot of tools and different approaches that you use depending on what you're hearing that person's needs are. So it's not the same every time, in other words. Is that right? Mm-hmm.
Definitely. It's every session is really tailor-made because our needs are different. Sometimes you show up to a session and you expect to work on a certain thing for your business, but maybe your friend has just died, and you just got the message. Then, of course, we will deal with the grief and the shock and what came up for the person. It's very in the moment.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. So, you really are involved in some cutting edge work here in this arena. What's next for you? How do you how do you see getting this out to the next level of people's awareness?
Okay. I want to start this really gentle movement, this sensitive movement. It's so important that our sensitivity is acknowledged, that we acknowledge, and we help other people to normalize feelings, that we get to a point where feelings are just feelings, that they're not labeled positive and negative anymore. They're just informants of our inner states. So then there's going to be less shaming, judging, and criticizing. Right now, I'm working on a 6-week program for highly sensitive business people to reduce core beliefs that they formed when they were young children, because those core beliefs are holding us back in expressing ourselves in our business. Like, oh, you're so shy and you don't know, you're too sensitive. All those things influence us. And when we can reduce them, things are starting to change and expand.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So you're finding the kind of the business application that's possible for all of this, would you say? Is that right?
Yes. I think as an immigrant, I'm even more aware of how important it is to have a sustainable living, that we can support ourselves, that we can create our own income, and also create other jobs. It comes definitely from growing up in a very productive, very industrious family with many entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and I think that what I love about this is that you really are finding a way not only to make it work in the individual, but how it expands out into all the areas of their life, right? That's a big deal because, we are what we do on some level, even though we're not. And even though we're not our emotions, we have emotions. I would think that this process really helps clarify that, because if you first clear that this is going to be something that's probably a little bit more of an intense experience for you than the average person. First, you have to kind of get real with that, and then be able to. That's when you can finally, kind of disassociate. Also, not to deny your feelings, but to no longer let them run you. Would you say that through your work that people become more empowered in that way, to sort of have feelings without becoming them?
Definitely, because then the feelings don't rule us. We can rule our feelings. When, before a presentation, I always tell people, listen, there is eustress, positive stress, the excitement of going on a radio show, or negative stress. Just knowing the difference that you're experiencing eustress, for example, makes a big shift in somebody. So being aware of those subtle things really empowers.
Made me think of a great quote a friend of mine wrote: "Whoever said fear was bad? Maybe it just means you're alive." Richard O'Donnell credit for that one. That's actually been something that became a mantra at one point, because it really helped me make a decision about how I would hold that particular emotion, which tends to come up when you're trying something challenging and new, when you really do need to push through, and it's helped me a lot. And I think it's kind of what I'm hearing with your work, that it gives people that superpower to push through what's been stopping them by labeling it, understanding it, maybe even compartmentalizing it, so that it's not running the show, and they get to make choices now about how their life goes.
Exactly.
Powerful.
And when they are so calm, and then they can make choices, and then they can really work on their passion, what is important for them. Because if you're constantly stressed and overwhelmed, you're just barely surviving in a way. But when you are in control of your feelings and you're aware, then you can take steps that changes your life, and in turn impact other people's life. We are often not aware that just showing up as we are, that we have an impact on other people. Just, smiling at somebody could save their life, or speaking with them, and we are not even aware. So just showing up as the best we can is really the best we can do every day.
I love this. And I love that, if anyone looking for coaching, coaching's terrific, and there's a lot of different categories now available. But for someone who is highly sensitive, to be able to target in that coaching work like this, cover the personal basis, but with your addition of this new 6-week course that you've created, being able to also have it apply to business, which is, going to affect your bottom line, which also affects your stress or relieves it. It's a really beautiful combination, I have to say. I think this is terrific work that you're doing. Tell us how people find you.
You find me on my website, karingoldgruber.com. So it's the spelling of my name. And my Facebook page is Next Step Coaching. I'm also on LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Well, this is Next Step work. And I just, thank you for helping me understand. That makes a lot of sense. And some of it I'm going to have to mull over, and I think I need to read that book just to, whatever we can do, like you said, to show up for someone in a way that has them, be glad they're around, be glad they're here, feel like their contribution is being received. They don't have to yell it because they're bringing it through. And I love that your movement is sensitive, as you put it, gentle. Sounds like the perfect approach. And I wish you the greatest good fortune with that. And I'm excited for the people who I hope this does become more and more well known, because I do think it's 25% of the population. And I love science. I love measurable facts. When you have measurable results, 25% of our population has been, secretly, quietly struggling with this. It really could make a huge, huge difference for us to become aware of this. So thank you, Karin, so much for taking the time to share this with us today. In closing, are there any parting thoughts you'd like to leave us with today?
I think the most important thing for everyone is to take care of themselves first, because when we are happy and take care of ourselves, centered and focused and learning to love ourselves, then we can start giving to others and support others. Our heart has to be full before we can give. And when we do that on a daily basis, there's then an abundance of love and appreciation and gratitude that's just overflowing, that you're sharing with everybody else. And you just have to show up and be yourself.
That's beautiful advice. I don't think there's any better. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I really, really appreciate it. I'm so glad to know you, and thank you for the great work you're doing out in the world.
Thank you for having me. It was such a pleasure chatting with you, Amy. It's very delightful. Thank you.
I'm so glad. Well, so we thank our wonderful, remarkable guest. Please look her up if this resonates with you, or if you know someone who has really been dealing with this, that could maybe use a hand up. So thank you, Karin Goldgruber, probably saying it wrong, but my German isn't very good. Thank you so much for joining us today. I want to thank all of our listeners, of course, that makes this possible, and especially our producer, the founder of the Divas Care Network, Candace Gish. Candace redefines the word diva to mean a courageously self-assured woman. Well, you've certainly brought yourself from zero to hero in that regard, Karin, and you're a great inspiration to those that will follow. The Divas That Care Network actually offers women of all walks a platform for sharing their voices in the world. We invite you to join us. So visit divasthatcare.com, hear more inspiring stories, and who knows, maybe you'd like to add your voice to the conversation. We'd love to have you. With that, I wish everyone a great rest of your day. Signing off until next time. Take care, everyone.
Thanks for listening. This show was brought to you by Divas That Care. Connect with us on Facebook, on Instagram, and of course on divasthatcare.com, where you can subscribe to our newsletter so you don't miss a thing.